Hello my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Making Poor Decisions, where today we're going to be making jackfruit mead. Alright, so today I am going to be making jackfruit mead. Why jackfruit mead? Well, I had a jackfruit and it was way too much for me to eat, so I figured, no, freeze half of it and see if it tastes good in mead. Now, if you've never had jackfruit before, go out and get one if you could possibly get it fresh. It's absolutely delicious. It's this large green spiky fruit that's really prominent in Asian countries, and I also believe South American countries as well. And it's an extremely sweet fruit, and to me, the flavor is that of like bubblegum. Just tastes like bubblegum to me, and it is one of my favorite fruits, and I always grab it when I can. Every once in a while, my grocery store will have it here in Chicago, and I run to grab it. It's kind of a lot to process. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but you get a lot of fruit. You get a lot of fruit from it. And I've always thought, what would this be like in mead? I shouldn't say always, but since I started making mead, I thought maybe jackfruit one day, because jackfruit is so sweet, the honey is so sweet. I just think it's a winning combination. So today I'm going to finally try it and hopefully not make a poor decision. And in this video, I'm going to be using a piece of technology I haven't actually used to brew mead yet. A bucket! And pretty much the reason I'm doing a bucket, this is a 2-gallon bucket that I purchased from Homebrew, Ohio. And one of the main reasons that I want to do it in this large bucket is because in my 1-gallon carboys, if I put all of this jackfruit, I have like a solid pound of jackfruit here. If I put all that in one of my carboys, number one, it's going to be a pain in the butt to get into the regular skinny neck ones. Even if I use my wide mouth gallon, I'm probably only going to yield maybe about a half a gallon of mead after I add everything else into it, let it ferment for a while. So I won't get that much actual liquid in the end. So I'm using a 2-gallon bucket, putting in my jackfruit and putting in a full gallon of spring water, because in the end, I would like a full gallon. And I think this is the way it's going to get me there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So to start, I'm going to unceremoniously dump in my 1 pound of jackfruit that I had processed and then frozen for a while, then de-thawed. Now the reason that I froze it and then de-thawed it is because when fruit freezes, ice crystals form within it, and those ice crystals kind of break down cell walls and cell barriers, and you actually get some more juice released out of it, so it's a little bit better to ferment and you get a little bit more flavor. Then I let it thaw, and here we are. And the honey that I'm going to be using today is Be Natural raw wildflower honey. There's 3 pounds of it here, and I'm just going to go ahead and dump all that in. Normally what I'll do is I'll have a funnel out and I'll have this heated so that it doesn't take too long for it to go through the funnel and all that, but I'm using a bucket today, so I don't have to do all of that. Let me just get all of this in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tea. I have a strongly brewed cup of black tea. This is going to be a source of tannins. I'm going to actually pour this tea into the honey container, shake it around, and then pour that into my bucket to get the remnants of the honey, because we want to use as much of it as possible. So I brewed this black tea with hot water, boiling hot water, and I let it steep for about 10 minutes. A little bit longer than you normally let your black tea steep if you're a tea drinker. Normally black tea is 3 or 5 minutes. I let this go for 10 minutes. I want a little bit of that bitterness in there, and I want a little bit of those tannins in there. Oh, don't explode. Basic science, Stephanie. You put a hot liquid into a container, shake it up, and it might pop. So maybe I make a mead today. Maybe I go to urgent care. Let's see. We're making mead. All right. Pour that in there. And yeah, I'm happy with what I got. There's a little bit of remnants on the side, but that's fine. What I'm also going to add to this is about 3 or 4 of these tangerine peels. The brand is, I'm going to try and pronounce this, it's Ouyang Shenqi dried tangerine peels. These are used in a lot of Asian cooking. I got it from an Asian grocer, and I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of these peels for some acidity. Now there's also going to be some acidity in the jackfruit as well, but I like to add it. And then I'm going to add, just for now, about half of this 1 gallon container of Crystal Geyser Alpine Spring Water. Now when you're making mead, you want to make sure that you are using spring water, not tap water, because that's going to have, or can possibly introduce some things you don't necessarily want in your mead, like chlorine or fluoride, things that might give you some off flavors. You also don't want distilled water because you still want some nutrients in there, right? Not necessarily nutrients, but you want something in there. So I like to go with spring water. And then I am going to give this a stir until it's all incorporated. Just kind of shake it around. I'm going to do this for a little bit, and then I'm going to come back on camera after it's all incorporated. All right, so obviously shaking the bucket was a bad idea. I'm so used to using the 1 gallon carboys that I can just shake the water and honey to incorporate everything. But that wasn't going to happen this time. So I sanitized another instrument that I haven't used in mead making before, a slotted spoon, and just kind of stirred it all together because I do want to make sure that this water, honey, tea, jackfruit combination is well incorporated. I also want to introduce some oxygen at this point because the yeasties do need a little bit of oxygen to thrive and to eat all of those wonderful sugars and turn them into wonderful alcohol. So at this point, I am going to add the rest of my water. And now I'm going to take a gravity reading. Okay, this should be good. And give it one more quick stir, incorporate everything. Okay. All right, let's take a look to see what we got in terms of our starting gravity. My neighbor's dog is not a fan of mead, apparently. All right, so my starting gravity is 1.09. 1.09. So that is the approximate starting gravity of this brew. And since I did have everything sanitized in a solution of hot water and star san, I'm going to go ahead and pour this back into my bucket. If you're making mead, if you're making wine, if you're making sake, cider, beer, if you're making any type of fermented beverage, please sanitize your equipment. If you don't, your brew can get infected, it can get moldy, and not only are you sad because you don't get to taste something amazing, but you've also wasted a lot of time and a lot of money. So star san is your best friend when it comes to brewing. I'm also going to add in a full packet of RedStar Premier Blank yeast. This is the yeast that I actually started with when I started making mead. I've expanded to other strains and things like that, but still had a bunch of these packets laying around, and there's nothing wrong with it. So I'm going to go ahead and use it. And I'm also going to add a dash of Fermento as well, because this is going to be an extra little bit of yeast nutrient to help kick off fermentation. And it'll also help your batches ferment a little bit sooner. Do you need to feed your yeast? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not, especially if you're doing it in small batches at a time, 1 gallon batches or 2 gallon batches. But it does help in speeding up the process. It does help, honestly, in my opinion, it helps with making a tastier brew, because if your yeast don't have to struggle to eat, then there might be some less off flavors in your brews. What I did notice is that sometimes it doesn't help with clarifying. Like if I use a little bit more yeast nutrient, I'll have a slightly cloudier brew, and you could use things like sparkleoid. Almost every video people are telling me to use sparkleoid, and I can. And I probably will one day, but for me, it's all about the taste. I don't care if I have a hazy mead or if I have a crystal clear mead. As long as it tastes good, that's really all that I'm after. Okay, I think that's good. That's all nice and incorporated. Now I'm going to go ahead and put a bucket top with the airlock built into it on here and let her sit for a few weeks. Now, about once a day or so, I'm going to come in, I'm going to stir it just in the bucket, just kind of give it a shimmy shake. Every couple of days I'll throw some more Fermento in here. But I want to make sure that I'm keeping an eye on the fruit cap, which is when the fermentation kicks off. There's going to be a lot of air bubbles coming up through here, and those air bubbles are going to raise all of the fruit to the top. And because there is a decent amount of space in between the top here and where the must ends, there is a possibility that my fruit can grow mold. And I don't want that to happen. So if you're brewing with fruit, actual like full fruit in your brew, just every couple of days, just punch that fruit cap down, or not every couple of days, at least once a day, once or twice a day, punch that fruit cap down to prevent the fruit from going moldy. And within a few weeks, hopefully we have something tasty and interesting to talk about. That's all for me for right now. So again, thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate you taking the time. Have a great, wonderful day, and happy brewing.